Hi everyone! Another day, another episode to look forward to. In our previous episode, Dr. Amber mentioned about product labels and pet food. Today, we'll find out more from Dr. Amber on how to read product labels.
That's right. Safety and health for our pets comes first.
So let's get started. This is Donnie, your Chief Treat Lady.
And I'm Dr. Amber, your official veterinarian at Vital Pet Life.
We're here to talk about pets, pet nutrition and wellness, anything that can help our fur children live a longer, vibrant, and happier lives.
All right.
Yeah. Welcome to Vital Pet Life Podcast. Okay, Dr. Amber, how do we really understand? I mean, how do we read pet labels? How do we even read ingredients? I know there's a way. I learned that, but can you tell us what's the best way to understand ingredients in our pet food?
Yeah, I am super excited about this topic. I can totally geek out about pet food labels. So I'm going to try to keep this succinct, but I think it's such important information that we know how to read a label. So I do have some notes just, to refer to. I want to just make sure that I'm giving you guys like exact information here. So, here we are to break it down. So there's a few things. There's only about 8 things that are actually required to be on a pet food label. So companies are required to list ingredients, but not the amounts or the quality or the digestibility of those ingredients. They're required to list minimum and maximum levels of protein, fat, moisture, and fiber, but not exact levels of any of those or any other nutrients in their food. They're required to have feeding instructions, but they don't actually have to put the calorie count on their food, which I think is really interesting. And they're not even required to have an expiration date on their food. So some of these, as I started learning more about pet food labels and nutrition, it's just really interesting to me that some calorie content and expiration date aren't even required on pet food labels. However, there is an organization called AAFCO, AAFCO, which stands for the Association of American Feed Control Officials. So AAFCO is an organization that has policies and requirements for pet food labeling, but they don't have any regulatory, enforcement, but they set the policies. So every food label is required to have an AAFCO statement, which is also called a nutritional adequacy statement. So every single food on the shelf, and sometimes when I'm in the pet store, I'll just kind of walk around and I'll look for these AAFCO statements because I'm a total dork. But I'm going to read them to you because they're really specific as to what they say. There's 3 different types of AAFCO statements. So the first one can say product name, fill in the blank there, is formulated to meet the nutritional levels established by the AAFCO dog or cat food. So it'll say the species of the food. And then for nutrient profiles for life stage, fill in your life stage. So for example, Woof Woof food is formulated to meet the nutritional levels established by the AAFCO dog food nutrient profiles for all life stages. So that's kind of, just a generic statement you'll see. Now, the second one says animal feeding tests using AAFCO procedures substantiate that product name provides complete and balanced nutrition for fill in your life stage. And number 3 says product name provides complete and balanced nutrition for life stage and is comparable to a product which has been substantiated using AAFCO feeding tests. Okay, so let me break this down. And the reason why I wanted to read that is because those are almost the exact words. Just fill in your product name, your species, and life stage of what you'll find on the bag. So it's not always necessarily like right by that guaranteed analysis. You sometimes will have to look around the label, but you will always find one of those statements. Now, these are probably... This statement is one of the most important things that you're going to see on the label. And that's because in that statement, course, it says the product name, but it also says the species.
Mhm.
And it will tell you the life stage, and it will tell you how they came up with this food, or how they're marketing it. So the first one that I read that says it's formulated to meet nutritional levels, that means that the food company has formulated it probably using some kind of computer program and done maybe some laboratory analysis. And that's how they've come up with their nutrition that's in the food.
Mhm.
So that's really important. Versus the second one that I read that says animal feeding tests using AFCO procedures. So in foods that have that specific statement, that they've actually fed the food to the pet. So versus the first statement where they may not have fed any pets this food, but when you punch the formula into the computer, it just meets the minimum requirements. That's much, much different than actually feeding a food to a group of dogs for a certain amount of time, and dogs and cats, and seeing how they actually do on the food. So that's why it's so important to find that AFCO statement on your food label. Now, then number 3, some foods will have like families. So they'll have like maybe a chicken formula and a beef formula, but otherwise it's pretty much the same type of food. And so they can use that statement number 3, that it's comparable to a product that has been substantiated. And so that third one you won't see as often, but sometimes if they change their formula a little bit, but the nutritional requirements are the same and they've done another formula over here, they'll say, well, this food is like this other formula.
Mm. Wow.
So again, AFCO statement, super important. It's important because if you're looking at a food for your growing puppy and you're saying, you find an AFCO statement that says it's been formulated for all life stages. So that means that it's a computer program, basically. I mean, that's kind of how I'm going to think of this, because they don't actually have to feed that food to growing puppies. Met the minimum requirements for any dog. All life stages means growing puppies, adult maintenance, lactation, gestation. And so personally, I would never feed an all life stages food to my growing puppy or my growing kitten, because it's not specific for growing animals. It might meet the minimum requirements, but we don't know that it's actually going to support healthy puppies and kittens. So again, that's why it's so, so important to read that AFCO statement.
Wow. Oh my God, so much stuff.
I know, so much stuff. And I'm going to try to just keep this simple,
Yeah,
but I do want to give you guys this information because it's so, so important,
that's
to
right.
understand that AFCO statement, understand life stages.
I think that's very important because like some people just pretty much just buy anything. Like I, for one, I didn't even know that there's a certain age wherein I have to change his food to senior food because I
Hmm.
have no idea. Like in my head, like, oh, senior maybe like around 10 or 11. But apparently when he reaches like 6 or 7, like tuxedo, like the dog, I mean, the vet was saying that he's now a senior dog, so you should give him like food for seniors, like
Yeah.
and like the ingredients or the nutrients that he might be needing is lacking with the common food that you've been feeding him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, an AFCO actually only recognizes 4 life stages. So, one is, or 4 categories, I guess. One is growth for puppies and kittens, one is adult maintenance, one is lactation and gestation. And then the other one is all life stages. So, technically, with AFCO, they don't actually have a category for senior pets.
No.
So again, just read that AFCO label. I have seen, and I mostly focus on puppies and kittens because I've seen so many times, like I pull a puppy food off the shelf, I read the AFCO statement, and it says formulated for all life stages. And again, I would not personally choose that food for my own growing pet.
Yeah. That's
Um, yeah. And just to add on a little bit to that, real quick, some companies will actually voluntarily add more information to their label. They'll have calorie counts, they'll have more nutritional information, they'll have an expiration date. And to me, I would personally pick these foods over some of the other foods that just give you the bare minimum of information, because it shows that they're willing to stand behind their product and actually make those claims. And so the higher quality, more upfront companies are willing to give more information than is required on the label.
Oh, okay. All right. Next question. Three common mistakes that parents make when reading pet product label.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the number one is buying a food because of the name that it has without reading the label. And so you might see X brand of dog food and you've seen a commercial for it, and you've heard from your buddy that seems to know a lot about dogs that this is a great dog food, and you buy it without really knowing anything about it. So I would read labels, read labels, read labels.
Mhm.
The second one is buying like the most expensive food because you think it's better because of the brand name, or for that matter, buying the very cheapest food.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think we just need to educate ourselves, a little bit more on what makes one food better than the other, and just, more informed decision.
I always feel like how my dogs, for some reason, like I look at Tuxedo's eyes.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, ooh, the food is like making him vibrant. So
Yeah, yeah. And we have a question about that, like a little bit later on. So we'll touch on that too. So
okay.
yeah. Um, I think the third mistake that we make when reading a pet food label is not following what we should feed them. And
Oh.
so, that is one of the things that's required on a pet food label, is that directions, the instructions for how much to feed. And so it's really important to follow that. I would say a general guideline. Sometimes they overestimate how much food you need to feed, but in general, it's kind of a good starting point. And
Mhm.
so, again, read your label, follow the instructions, and then as you see how your dog is doing on it, are they gaining weight? Well, maybe we need to back the food off a little. Have they lost a little weight? Maybe we need to increase the food a little to get them to the perfect amount for their normal weight.
Yeah. Okay. So this one is different. So ingredient list. I know reading the product label is different, but ingredients, like I know there's a what do you call that, like progression, right? Like I think you
Yeah.
mentioned this, we discussed this a lot in our conversations, and I think in earlier podcasts we mentioned how to read ingredients on the product.
Yeah, yeah, we've talked a little bit about this, so let's just take a quick deep dive here. So, the definitions of ingredients on pet food labels are very specific, and they're set by AFCO, which we've talked about, and the FDA. So, for example, if we look up chicken meal, we know chicken meal is specifically dried chicken meat that's been dehydrated and ground into a powder, versus whole chicken is like chicken breast, chicken, skeletal chicken meat with the water still in it. So, kind of how we would buy chicken at the store is what whole chicken is that all of the ingredients on the label are listed in order by weight. So, the heaviest ingredient goes first all the way down to the least, the lightest, the least amount. So that's how it's read. So if you see, whole chicken is your number one ingredient, then that's chicken meat with the water still in it. So let's keep that in mind for because some companies will say, well, whole chicken is our number one ingredient, and these other guys have chicken meal as their number one ingredient. So let's think about what the definitions mean, though. So the whole chicken has the water, which makes it the heaviest ingredient. But if we have chicken meal, which is ground up, dried chicken, as our number one ingredient, then that chicken meal food actually has more chicken,
Or
more actual chicken
than water.
than yeah, it doesn't have the water weight in it, which obviously dilutes out the amount of chicken that we actually have, right? So
Yeah.
that's something to think about when we're reading the ingredient labels, is that number one ingredient is the heaviest ingredient. So if we're weighing with the water, then we have less chicken. Okay. The other thing is, because of that, the way that they can list ingredients from heaviest to lightest, you want to read like every single ingredient, because companies can actually split up ingredients to make them look like they're less. So, for example, with wheat, let's say we have wheat in our diet, but
Mhm.
it's, listed lower down. Well, if you see wheat germ mill, wheat flour, wheat bran, it's low down, but we actually, like, that's all wheat, but they're splitting up the ingredients to make it look like it takes up, it's less than it actually is. Does that make sense? So they'll do that with a lot of ingredients, is they'll split it up into the different types.
Is like a filler for the food.
Fillers, that's hard to say, because probably in a cheaper type of food. Now,
Yep.
even high quality foods, like, I'm not against grains. Dogs are omnivores. They graze on plants in the wild. Like, I'm okay with it. Some companies, and I think there's, specific types of, like, the germ in the grain has more vitamins than if you strip the germ out and you just give the grain. And so there are certain reasons why they'll put these ingredients into food. And sometimes it's a cheaper carbohydrate source. Not necessarily that it's bad for the animal, but it's cheaper to manufacture and it's more available, if that makes sense. So, if you look at an ingredient
It's
list and they have wheat or they have corn or they have barley or whatever, it's not necessarily that they're just trying to fill
okay.
in with other stuff. All of those things usually meet either nutritional or energy requirements.
Mm.
And really, um, the more foods that they add in, the better balance of a diet you can get. If you kind of have, now this is in just normal everyday pets that don't have health issues, in if you have certain kind of medical conditions or you have food allergies, that's a whole different
Yeah.
thing that we're not really
Yeah.
going to touch on. But
Mhm.
in a regular maintenance diet, the more ingredients you have that are adding, like, fat and carbs and protein and vitamins and minerals, then you actually can, it's easier to make a more balanced diet the more food ingredients you have.
Mm.
So that's, yeah, that's kind of,
Okay.
um, yeah.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I don't really think about fillers anymore, especially if you're going with a good type of dog food,
Yeah.
and cat food.
I think nowadays people are more conscious on really finding and formulating better. And there's a lot of like really better companies now that really wanted to give like better ingredients for our animals.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just curious because like, is it
Yeah.
really needed? You know,
No, that's a great
especially with kibbles.
question. Yeah.
Especially
Cause
with kibbles. Yeah.
yeah, I've had a lot of those questions about fillers for sure, especially when it comes to grains in animal
Yeah.
food.
Exactly.
So then let's touch quickly on byproducts. So
Yeah.
again, byproducts have a really specific definition by AFCO and FDA. It sounds like a horrible word, like gross. I would never eat a byproduct. But actually,
I mean, it's good too, because like it's like being circular, if you're in the whole, right?
yeah. So byproducts, the official definition of what a byproduct is organ meats like kidneys, liver, heart, lungs, spleen, bones too, ground up bones, blood. And so, maybe these are things that I wouldn't want to eat, like they're not for human consumption, but it doesn't mean that they're bad quality. They actually have a lot of nutrition in them. And so, um, It doesn't, byproduct cannot include hair or horns or hooves or teeth or feathers. Like, that's not what byproduct is. It's
Yeah.
bone and blood and organ meats. And
I think
so,
in the wild they kind of wanted to eat the organs, right? Like when you
absolutely, like, you see a wolf or a lion that kills, a
yeah,
deer or gazelle, and they're going for the organ meats first. So
yeah.
they are nothing, in my opinion, again, nothing to be scared of. Now, that being said, I would stay away from foods that say animal byproduct or meat byproduct. If it's just
Oh,
really non-specific, then that can be other
that's
things
yeah,
like roadkill or
right.
something. But if it
Yeah.
says, like, poultry byproduct, like, that's very specific. Um, Beef byproduct, or actually, like, for beef and sheep and lamb and stuff, they don't have to necessarily say that. I mean, it'll be listed on the ingredients, but if it seems like it's just a really generic, like, animal byproduct or meat byproduct, I wouldn't like that ingredient. But if it's poultry byproduct or beef byproduct, then we know it's organ meats, blood, and bone.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know.
Which, yeah,
Okay, so another question here. What's the 3% rule in pet food? I mean, I don't
the
know.
3% rule.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
So,
I
so
said
this
this.
is No, it's okay. Yeah, so this is really interesting. So there's a 3% rule, there's a 25% rule, and there's a 95% rule. So let's
What
talk
is
about that.
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
what is
So a 3% rule is also called the with rule. And a food ingredient can be labeled as with if it's 3% to 25% of the diet. So I'm going to just list the definitions first, and then we'll go into the examples so that you guys can see what this means actually. So there's a 25% rule that's listed on the label as dinner formula or recipe. And so all of those things make up at least 25% of the diet. And then the 95% rule, it's listed as the main ingredient. So, for example, if we have a dog food that says dog food with beef, we know that 3% of the diet is made up of beef because it says with beef. If we have a label that says beef formula, beef dinner, or beef recipe, we know that that's a 25% rule. So
mm,
between, or, at least 25% of that food is made up of beef. And then if it's actually listed as beef dog food, then we know 95% of that food is beef. And so let's remember that beef dog food versus recipe versus with. So that's
yeah.
95, 25, 3.
Oh my God, it's a lot for me to
It is a
process.
lot. It is a lot. And I would actually encourage anyone who's interested in this into digging deeper to go to the AFCO website. So that's aafco.org, afco.org. They have just a ton of information about food ingredients and labels and how to read it. And so, here we're trying to dive deep, but really quickly. And so you can totally nerd out on the AFCO website if you want to read more and more about pet food labels.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, lastly, how do you know if the dog food or cat food is good? And I think I kind of touched that a while ago
Yeah,
with how,
yeah. So
yeah,
we've already given a lot of good information about how to read it, how to know if it's good or not. And then when it all boils down to feeding your pet, really, how is your pet doing on the food? You can have the best type of food, but maybe it's not agreeing with your pet. So, some things to look for is look at the stool. Is your pet having diarrhea? Are they constipated? Are they having like big, huge poos? Then like, they're not digesting this food
yeah,
properly.
yeah.
So the stools are super important. Um,
I
and
mentioned
then
The
Oh, go
vibrance.
ahead.
I mentioned about the vibrancy of the eye too. I feel
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, like how is their energy? How is their weight? Are they maintaining their weight? How is their muscle structure? Are they are they lean? Do they have good muscle structure? Of course, some of that comes with exercise too, but just
yeah,
in general, like how is their body condition? How is their coat?
yeah. I
Is their
see.
coat luscious and shiny, or is it really dull and dry and their skin is flaky? All of those things can show just with poor nutrition, just a poor diet. And so, again, let's we always do a few takeaways here. Let's remember what we talked about of how to read the label, and
Mm-hmm.
then look at your dog and how it's doing on this diet.
Exactly. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the takeaway for this conversation, Dr. Amber, it's really reading and I feel like going to the AFCO website is the best thing, or really educating yourself on the ingredients or how to read your labels.
Right, right. And you know what? You can even call the company. I mean, most of the time there's a
Yeah.
number on the bag. You can Google it. You can Google their contact information and contact them and say, "Hey, do you have a veterinarian on staff? Do you employ veterinary nutritionists? Do you have scientific literature behind your products?"
Yeah.
And companies that are willing to give you more information and to be forthright about what they're putting in their food. Like for me, I'm more willing to trust them and to feed that
Mm-hmm.
food than ones
Yeah.
who are just putting the very minimum amount. They don't want people to ask questions. And so, yeah, I mean, dig in and ask the hard questions.
Exactly. Same thing with us. Like we are, unfortunately, we're not AFCO. What do you call that? AFCO brand. We're under NASCI. We're a supplement brand. We do get
Yeah,
a lot of questions like where our products are. That's why it's very important that we basically are transparent with whatever it is that we put in our bottle. Like
right,
we have all certification, everything that we put out in our ingredients, like you can, it's all verified by a third party company that it's clean, it's tested, and it's actually like what we say in our label. Like
right,
some some companies will say it's wild Alaskan formula. I mean, what does it mean? Like, is it
right,
really wild Alaskan? So, I mean, again, same thing. You had to read the label, understand, like we're governed, yeah, governance. I mean, I was
yes,
wondering, like, okay, we're as a supplement company, we're governed by NASCI, and for food, it's AFCO. So, yeah,
yeah.
you can
And there
your website.
are, if you look on the AFCO website, you can find information about supplements and treats and stuff like that too, because some of them will have AFCO statements on them. Um,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of like Q&A about what does food grade mean, what is veterinary recommended. Like you can
Mhm.
just you can find this information so that you know what you're getting.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So, what a great discussion today, Dr. Amber. I feel like this is the most important thing that I mean, other than it's the most basic thing that everybody or every pet parent need to learn.
Yeah,
What a great conversation we have, Dr. Amber. This is very important. I feel this is one of the best podcasts, not best, but the episode that I will recommend all
yeah,
pet parents to listen to, because the
yeah,
information that you just gave us, I was like, oh my God, it's too much. But it's a lot of things to decipher and digest. But again, it's good to educate ourselves on how to read product labels and also ingredients.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. All right. So don't forget to follow our channel, guys, for more talks about pets, tips, advice, and fun stuff.
Happiness, vibrance, and longevity for our fur babies and our planet.
So thank you for tuning in. And this is Donnie, your chief treat lady at Vital Pet Life.
And don't forget to check those pet food labels before buying anything. This is Dr. Amber, your official veterinarian at Vital Pet Life.
On our food, like the ones that we give to our pets. Sorry.
That's right. Safety and health comes first.
Hold on, Dr. Amber. Did I?
Okay, I was like, I'm just going to go with it, Donnie. It's fine.
like, Okay, again.
I would read labels, read labels, read labels. Yeah.